Yeah, you've been hustling the whole life. All right, well, we're back at it again. This is Noah, and then you're representing today. Well, you represent everything, but you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm John Amaroufi with Scoop Soldiers. We pick up, we're pet waste removal, so we pick up dog poop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you were kind of going into your backstory a little bit there. How'd you get into? You said you were grinding your whole life. So, how? Take us through that. Like, How did it start?
Yeah, so I went to college. Well, so my dad owned his own business, which means that I was working for free for a very young age for my dad. Um, okay, yeah. So I was, working for him for free. I mean, I got pictures of me at like 9 years old on a tractor plowing, like a full-size tractor. I was walking around looking for broken sprinkler heads because I had a landscape company when I was like, 6. It just, I've always been working. So when I got old enough to get a car, I got my own job. And then eventually I went to college and got a degree in electronic computer technology and found myself sitting behind a computer all day and not talking to people and hated it. So I kind of went in a different direction, got into construction just because I liked building things.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you can walk away and you have a thing. When I was on, doing programming and things like that, like you turn around at the end of the day and you didn't really make anything that's tangible. It kind of, it's nice to drive by something you built 4 years ago and see it and go like, oh yeah, I built that. It feels good. So got into construction and then became a commercial superintendent. I did a lot of high-rise work, bank work. I was pretty lucky. Worked for a good company. And then I got laid off. And when I got laid off, I called a buddy of mine named Damon. And he's the founder of Constructive Services, my commercial concrete company.
Okay.
And I actually met him on a trip. We go to Mexico every year for a week, and we build a house for a homeless family. So I was in Ohio doing travel work, and I was broke and busted. The company owed me a ton of money, and they were a bunch of, kind of cheats and liars, and I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I just was done, right? And I called him up, and I said, hey, told him the story of what's going on, and he was like, well, I'm going to be, hey, just meet me at the rental place at 5 a.m. tomorrow, and just ride with me. We'll figure it out. I said, okay. I had the phone. Or I wasn't in Ohio at that time. I was in Oklahoma. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I hung up the phone, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was in Tulsa. And I was like, get my stuff and go. And I threw everything in my car, drove all night, got like half an hour of sleep, pretended like no big deal, showed up, and I rode around with him, and he was like, why don't you come to work for me? Do you know how to drive a truck? And I said, sure, I don't have a license for that. So I went and got a CDL, a commercial driver's license, so I could drive the dump truck. Because when I first started working for him, I was what they call the working foreman,
Okay.
which is basically Armando, who works for me today still, was my boss, and he would just go like get in the hole and dig. And then when anyone like the job superintendent would show up, they'd be like, hey, what is? And they would point at me. So I'd go talk to them, pretend I knew what I was talking about. And then when that guy left, they'd go, get back in the hole. So I did that for a while, got good at it. And Damon would, on Fridays, take me into his office and show me how to do payroll and how to do billing and how to write estimates. And then he got kind of started doing a little asphalt work, and then that kind of fell apart, and he had to essentially close down the company without actually closing it. So he laid everybody off, and we all kind of went our separate ways. He went and got a job as a commercial superintendent, which he still does to this day. He works for a very big company, and I went to work. That's when I got a job as a commercial superintendent, and I did all the bank work and all of that. I kind of skipped around a little bit, but coming back full circle. And then I went and then when I got laid off a few years later, I called him up, and he said, well, I'm in San Antonio. Constructive services is still a thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you come back and try to run it? And I said, I thought, well, you don't get opportunities like that every day. So
Yeah.
I've always known that the goal for me was to own my own company, right? So I jumped on that, and it's been a nice, slow, bumpy road, but it's been every year's kind of better than the last, and it's been pretty good. So from there, I was doing a lot of subcontracting work for a guy named Mike, and Mike got mad at his boss and quit, and I said, well, you can work for me. So he worked for me for about 6 months, sold a lot of work, and then decided he wanted to get into real estate. So then I said, okay, so I went in with him.
So what year is this around?
So this was probably 2013.
2013. Okay.
So we went in on a home investors franchise that we buy ugly houses people. We opened that up, moved it to Nashville before Nashville was cool, and it was we started flipping houses out there. And the reason why it's important that it was before Nashville was cool is getting funding for the real estate business was very challenging. Here in Dallas, like, you could trip over money for if you were flipping houses, or if you were flipping houses or building storage units, like you have to like dodge the cash because everybody wanted to be in that business, right? Especially that time before it got played out. But in Nashville, it was still a new thing, and so we had to look really hard, and we finally found a reliable funding source. And our colleagues in the area were on the same boat we were in, so we decided to start brokering for that funding source. And so we started Property Recycling USA, which is now morphed into Vault Private Lending or Vault Funding, depending on the consumer side or the investor side. So we started brokering out loans, and then we eventually got our own investment into our fund, and we created the fund, and we've been writing loans for people who fix and flip houses for a few years now. And then I've had some other real estate ventures on the side, because when you're in that business, you just get opportunities, and they're, so you just set up a special, a one-time company, you do the thing,
Do people like bring you jobs? Is that what you're saying, opportunities?
Yeah, so, well, like,
Houses or-
yeah, so there's a lot of that. Like today, I got a call about someone who wants to fund basically a trailer park in North Carolina.
Okay.
And I've actually done deals like that before. The asset is as far as asset classes go, it's not great, but the cash flow is amazing, because there's 7 out of 8 of the trailers are rented, so it's like a 10-12 cap rate, which is a lot higher than you'd get at most properties, and the actual property value is low. So it's, I don't know, I haven't made up my mind on it, but you just get phone calls because people know you're in the space, and you build that network, and they know, okay, well, if I call Mike, or if I call John, or if I call so and so, if he won't do it, he might know who would, right? So it's kind of like a network, and then that's how they get my numbers, from someone who thought I would do the deal, that kind of thing. So going through that, so the fund is still in operation, and it's been a little bit rough lately with the rising interest rates, but we're still here. And then one of the guys that I was doing real estate deals with like that is named Ron, and Ron walked into my office one day, and it was just random. I was on my computer, and I saw a pop-up ad for a poop scooping business, and it blew my mind. And he walked in the door, and I just looked up at him, and I said, "Did you know for $15 a week, someone will come to your house and pick up your dog poop?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to Discovery Day on Tuesday. Do you want to go?" And I thought, I think I have to. And it turns out he has a long history with Josh and EJ, who were the founders of Scoop Soldiers, and they had just launched franchising, and he'd been kind of bugging them for like a year prior, saying like, "Hey, I want to get into this business with you guys," and the timing was just so weird. I was like, I had no desire to pick up dog poop, but I can't just leave that. Like, I can't just walk away from that. So I went to Discovery Day, looked at the numbers, and it's a very lucrative business.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, you know what? We're picking up dog poop.
It seems like because I worked for a lawn care company.
Yep.
So it seems like all those things where you can come in, get it out, but they pay you a lot for it.
Yeah.
That seems lucrative because like with mowing, you have to worry about people that are mowing the lawns. You got to worry about labor and stuff.
Right.
Lawn care, you spray it with Poop Scoop. You just grab.
Yeah.
Seems like that's the businesses that work really well.
Yeah. Our goal is to get in and out of a house in, just a few minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
3 minutes for $15.
Yeah. So you one tech can probably manage about 30 houses a day. So, yeah. We have about we're just under 1,900 customers right now.
Wow.
So it's a growing business too. I think that if you look at it, 20 years ago, everybody changed their own oil. Now almost no one does. 10 years ago, everybody mowed their own yard, and now it's probably only 20 or 30% of people mow their own yard. Like, people don't go to the grocery store as often. They get groceries delivered. They get food delivered. Like, this is the way the world is going. And I think that, the market penetration now is, single-digit percentages. And, it's not going to be everybody. Yeah. But it might be 20 or 30% of pet owners, and that's a huge market. Mm-hmm. So...
even for lawn care, because I searched up prospecting for lawn care companies.
Yeah.
And Dallas is a big spot for it. But when you go into lower income spots, you don't pay for lawn care when you go to
right.
lower income spots. Same probably with
right. For us, it's the middle market, right? Because if the extreme low end, you're not going to have a lot of disposable income to pay for a service like that. When you get to the real high end, they have more of a lawn, like a yard service. So it'll be more of a turnkey with lawn mowing, landscaping, color change, all the details. Like, it'll be more of a... Yeah, it would be like more of a, one person's full-time job is to handle everything outside kind of thing. So that's not common until you get to the real high end, but we do some high-end stuff. We've done, a lot of football players, not a lot, but a few of them, things like that. But once you get, real high-end, it gets harder to get in there.
So what are your opinions on referral partners? Because you listed a bunch of services, and it seems like you just did one with Poop Scoop.
Yeah.
What is your stance on, referral partners? Because I know a lot of people say those are key when starting a business.
They can be. For, the real estate stuff, that's pretty much gold, right? Because for poop scooping, we've had mixed results. It's just, I think our biggest challenge is tracking all of that because the quantities are so big. Mm-hmm. Real estate, it's pretty easy because if somebody brings you a 40-unit apartment complex, you don't get 6 of those a day. It's really easy to keep track of, this was Bob's deal,
Yeah.
But when you're, trying to manage 1,900 customers, it's hard to know, who's providing you what deal flow. And also there's not a lot of big dollars to be had in that service, right? So
that's true, yeah.
So
it's more of if there's a big partnership between the two franchises, let's say one of the Gecko Green's the company that I was at, and it's
right.
The two working together would be adding it as a service would be more of that than it would be really a referral partner base, one-to-one basically.
Right, and we've looked at some of that stuff. I just haven't found the right partner.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely open to it because I think there's a big potential, right? Yeah. Because we've got that big customer base where if you say, all right, hey, you could add on to your service, fertilization, and go to the fertilization guy and say hey, put this on your roster and I'll do your, the only issue for me personally on that is with Chorby, they offer a lot of those services. So it's already kind of and they have about 7,000 customers, so they're even bigger. But we're working on that, and I've been talking to other like pet groomers, and we had a lot of advertising in like the little like physical advertising at veterinarians' offices, and the where you keep your like at the dog hotels. There's a better name for it. I can't remember, but doggy daycares. We've done a lot of partner marketing with people like that, and there's like Dog Fest coming up in, I think it's Coppell, and some sponsoring some stuff up there, and so we're looking into doing partnerships. It's just challenging.
So it seems like you go to a lot of fairs, right? You go to a lot of places where things are happening. Would you suggest that to other younger entrepreneurs or people just getting started to just go to those fairs and those networking events? And what should they do when they go to those networking events?
Yeah, so yes and no. I think that going to where things are happening is very, very important, because a lot of times those, when people say, hey, that guy's really lucky, he had all these really lucky breaks, right? Yeah. It's true, but the difference between, the guy driving the Bentley that got really lucky and, the guy that's working the 9 to 5, is that they both got lucky, but the guy who, when Ron walked into my office, I could have just said, oh, wow, that's really neat, and went back to whatever we were talking about. But it's knowing when to take advantage of those lucky situations. So kind of back to that, if you're at where whatever deals are happening, you're much more likely to be part of those deals, because people you're short-sighted, right? Unless you just really have something amazing to offer, people aren't really going to think, oh, I should make sure that we include this guy on this deal. It's more of you happen to be there and collaborated and made a thing happen. But the straight networking events where you go and it's like, like a Toastmasters thing, or there's a lot of, like there's one at a hotel down the road in Frisco that I've gone to a couple of times. I've had real low hit rate with that, because kind of the same reason is I've only gone a few times, because I don't have time for it. And I think if you have time for it, you don't really have a lot going on. So not always, but a lot of times. And then you're in a room full of people who are kind of in the same boat you are. Maybe something happens, but it's I think a little bit lower. And so trade show events are good too sometimes for things like that. Depends on what it is. Some of them are expensive and you don't really get a lot out of them. But if you find a good quality like trade group in whatever you're looking at, you can find a lot of value to that. For the lending group, there's the American Association of Private Lenders, and I've gotten tons of value out of that, tons of contacts of people who are in the industry.
American what?
Association of Private Lenders.
Okay.
They're really good. The Garasi conferences, and Garasi is my securities attorney. They throw a big conference because you see people who are doing what you're doing. So I think the key is, if in the events there's a lot of like, I don't want to sound bad, but the entrepreneurs, right? And there's nothing wrong with being in that spot. Everybody has to be. Yeah. But if you're just surrounded by people who want to do the thing you're doing, I feel like Pitbull is that way. Those Pitbull conferences,
I haven't. Wait. What?
So it's like a business conference.
Okay.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, it's probably better.
Like I'm the guy who doesn't know.
Well, and I don't know. There's a lot of people who go to it. They were spamming me for a long time trying to get me to go, and it's just like.
I've just gone to the BNIs, the local networking, and this right here.
Yeah.
Has been the best thing for me.
And I think this is the kind of thing that is very beneficial, right? So it's going back to you're associated with people who are doing the things.
Yeah.
Versus going to the place where people who want to be doing the things.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to kind of differentiate that. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with being there, because everybody has, like, I wanted to do the thing before I started doing the thing.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
you just...
Everyone starts out as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just you just got to be careful and not pay $700 to go to a thing where nobody's going to help you, because it's just a bunch of people who are in the same boat. So, yeah.
So you would suggest, so then instead of going to, you would suggest getting your licks in though, right? Just getting there, figure it out for yourself, because you can't just be like, hey, that's the place, I'm not going to go to that place. But more of like, what would you say, if someone's first starting out, do they go to those networking events or they go direct to the person? Because it seems like your advice would be more direct to the person, right?
I think more direct to the person. Okay. Like if you don't have anywhere else to go, it's going out there and doing something. It's better than doing nothing. Yeah. But if you, and I found out there's some industries are very closed off, but I think more often than not, you can find someone in the industry that will help you or go to lunch with you. Like for concrete, I go to lunch with my competitors on a regular basis. I know a lot of them.
Do you know Big Crush Concrete? Big City?
Big City Crush Concrete. Yeah, they're a big vendor of ours. We probably, I don't know, we might spend maybe not six figures a year there, but pretty close. Like, I don't really know the owner there, but they've got several locations around town. So it's a brilliant business model. I mean, it's brilliant. Yeah. So we place and finish concrete, but most of the time there's, like let's say there's pothole. So I got to cut it up. Now I have the concrete. It's broken up concrete. I've got nowhere to take it. So before Big City, you would have to pay a landfill to go dump at a landfill, and nobody wants to just throw, like, anything I can keep out of a landfill. I feel is better than being in a landfill. So I can dump for free at Big City. Yeah. And then they literally have this mountain of broken up concrete, right? Yeah. And then so like I will dump it, and then they will push it off of this mountain down into this giant grinder and grind it up. But because I now have, like, there's a pothole, so there's unstable dirt there. Yeah. So I buy from Big City the same concrete I brought them as crushed concrete. And then I haul it back with me, and I put it in the hole, and then I pour fresh concrete over the top of it. So it's a brilliant business model. Of course. But it's genuinely the most cost effective, and it's a great product. Like like TxDOT uses it on the highways. Like it's, and I feel like it's a little bit of recycling, because concrete gets a bad rep for being environmentally, taxing. So I feel like, okay, well, at least we're not making it worse. But the concrete I am reusing. And then they pull the rebar out and they recycle that too. So that's a.
I know for people that are watching, I just make sure, because I have anxiety about, like, it just. I would,
it'd be super sad if we sat here and you were like,
I have anxiety about, like, literally making sure everything.
We have 30 seconds of video.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I've been in this for a while, and I just now bought, like, bunches of storage. Okay. So I used to have it cut off on me, and I'm like, I still have those flashbacks of, like, stuff cutting off on me. So I just want to make sure everything's good. Yeah. So we don't have a film crew, so I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Speaking of getting into social media and everything, I know we talked about it before. You're one of the partners at
Scoop Soldiers. Yeah.
He was invested in a marketing team.
Well, so part of the Chorby branding. Yeah, he essentially hired a media department, and they've started making commercials and YouTube videos, and it's the last one they did was pretty impressive. I'm like, oh man, I got a long way to go. So I started, making YouTube videos on the side, just because, he encouraged me to start doing that. It's one of those where getting me on camera isn't exactly the main goal, but it could be a goal, right? And it's pretty clear to me that he's right, that you have to do about 100 YouTube videos before you get anywhere smooth and clean on camera. And I think, well, okay, how do you get to 100? Well, you do one, and then you do another one, and then you don't watch it because it's terrible, and you don't like the way you sound, and you think you look goofy, and all of that, and you just keep plowing through it till eventually you get over it, I think. So I'm still in the plowing through it mode, because don't try to find my YouTube channel because it's pretty embarrassing, you know.
Yeah, it took me a heck of a long time as well. This is the podcast number like 14. This is my third one today.
Okay.
But I'm just banging them out everything because this has been the best way for me to meet people and provide value first.
For sure.
What is your kind of like, I guess, opinion on providing value first, and then also I feel like your answer is going to be yes. So
Yeah.
what creative ways have you brought value to the table in deals?
Yeah, so I'm the king of working for free.
Okay.
I get paid in everything I do except for the 501c3 charities that I work with now, but that's been more of a recent thing because I was always, I believe that, okay, if I can add value, people will choose my partners pretty carefully to make sure that I'm working with people who would appreciate that value. And, for me, it's like, okay, well, I can just bring in more than I'm worth, then there's a profit there to give back to me, right? So that's kind of my attitude is you go and you prove your worth first and then collect the payday when everybody's getting paid, right? But you have to be careful with that because I was doing a lot of free work for things that weren't really working out too, right? Because a few years ago I decided to just take the spaghetti and throw it up on the wall like everywhere and just see what stuck, right? So that's why I had to close down a couple things, the past couple of years that were they were just floating along, not really doing anything. I wasn't really making any money on them. I wasn't really losing any money, but it was taking up time. So I had to kind of call the things that weren't worth it. So, but yeah, I feel like you can just, for me, it's the experience and connections. You're getting like my Rolodex, which is pretty deep, and someone who's going to give you my honest opinion, and I think that's a value. So.
Okay. So even with keeping people value, like honest and everything, giving an honest opinion, with some of your friends or even business partners, you're brutally honest. I'm guessing when you talk to them, you're like, hey, if they're I guess, especially in my young kind of hustle culture.
Yeah.
If I see my friend sitting on the couch doing something, I'm like, hey, let's go. Come on, what's going on? You have that a little bit still when you get a little bit older in that older entrepreneur spot?
Yeah, so I've toned down a lot. Like
Okay,
I was,
okay.
Was the guy who would grab the giant bullwhip and start just going like, why are you not moving? Like,
Yeah,
let's go.
yeah.
If you got time to lean, you got time to clean. Like,
Yeah.
I had an infinite number of those, like just on people. But as I've grown older, I've mellowed out a little bit. And also a lot of those friends that were sitting on the couch, now I see maybe once every year, every couple of years, and they're not really a big part of my life because our worlds aren't really the same anymore.
Yeah.
When you're spending your free time and your free money going out to restaurants and bars and clubs and living paycheck to paycheck, and it's not the same world I live in. I used to live in that world.
Yeah.
But then, I started putting my money towards things that my money needs to go away and make friends and come home. Like, that's what I focus my money on. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't have a lot of cash just sitting around. Compared to some people that I went to high school with that have, paycheck to paycheck, they might consider that a lot of cash. But in the world that I'm operating in, I run pretty lean because, especially, in the days before higher interest rates, like if your money is sitting in the bank, it's not really helping you. So if you can put it into an investment or a company or into more product to sell, or throw it back in the fire, make the fire bigger. And that's what I've been doing. Obviously you got to keep a nest egg because you never know, you break a leg tomorrow or who knows.
Yeah.
Right? Get hit by a bus.
Mm-hmm.
Like you gotta have a little emergency savings for stuff like that. But other than that, it's like throw it back in. I don't. I drive a nice truck, but it's a regular truck. I don't have anything fancy. I don't drive a Bentley. I don't have Corvette collection or anything.
How is it? Just because you want to have your money making more money, or is it kind of like a thing where you're
basically.
just like, I don't? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's. I'm not gonna say I'm so humble that I'm gonna be the Warren Buffett guy driving the 1980 Camry when I got billions of dollars in the bank. No, I will enjoy my money, but in the meantime, if I can send that dollar out to go make more dollars, I'm gonna do that, and that's how I've gotten to where I am. There was early on in my business owner career, I had to separate the finances where my wife runs the household finances, and I can go look at it, but I'm pretty blind to it, because what was happening is we'd run out of money, and it would be like, my wife would be like, hey, rent's due, what's going on? And I would be like, oh, well, let me here, I'll just let me write a check, because I was so consumed on taking that money and investing it back into the business that I didn't care enough to pay myself. And it'd be like, oh yeah, you haven't paid yourself for 6 months. That's a problem. I haven't taken a dime, and that's why I'm out of money. So she handles that, which forced me to put myself on a regular pay schedule, because I don't know that we have enough money, and I don't want to know that we have enough money. So it's like, okay, I pay myself a normal salary, and we do that's
interesting.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, you're trying to run lean, and you don't want to know how much, if you guys are okay. You want to be like, hey, I still gotta go.
Right. That I need that fire behind me.
Yeah.
If I have a to-do list with 100 things on it.
Yeah.
And 30 of them are on fire, I will get 85 of that done in one day. But if I have a to-do list with 2 things that aren't that important, I'll never get it done. Never. I have to have the big giant lion chasing me,
Yeah.
That motivation keeps me going.
So how do you kind of incorporate that when you in business, to not on the personal side of internal fire,
Right.
but even in business? Because I know you said you went to lunch with some of your competitors.
Oh yeah.
So how do you have all those big? I guess you do have a big line of tasks, anyways. Because you get more businesses, right? You get more in assets.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were talking about this before. I had a question that I wanted to ask. So speaking of, since you have all those multiple businesses,
Yeah.
Why did you choose multiple instead of that mainstream mindset of stick on one thing and just go with that one thing?
Right. So my strategy from the very beginning was to have 100 little water hoses filling up my swimming pool, instead of the one giant fire hose, because for me, I wanted the safety net of, if any one thing went wrong, or part of the economy crashed, or concrete gets outlawed or whatever, I don't have it. It's not devastating. I can recover. I can still keep going. So that's why I've diversified in different industries. Was purposeful but random, right? And so, and I think part of what you were asking earlier was about should you try to do one thing and do it well, or do multiple things? And for me, it's getting through to that, past the second stage of business, right? So the first stage is the startup stage, and that's anywhere from 0 to a couple of years, and everything's new, everything's exciting. You're looking at every day is do or die. You get a new project, the biggest one you've ever had, and you get all these wins, and oh my gosh, I can't believe we pulled that off. And you look at the bank account, and you're like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And then the next day you're like, oh my God, we're rich. And then it's exciting, and it's an adrenaline rush. But then once you get past that startup stage, you get to the grind, and the grind usually lasts 10 years, and it's doing the thing you did yesterday. And if you can get 1/10% better than you did yesterday, that's a huge win. you're just trying not to go backwards. You're trying to grow, like a 10 to 15% growth rate over the year is, nothing on a daily basis, right? So you're in that, and that's where a lot of people, I feel like, if the hardest part making through the startup stage, because you're living and dying every day, right? But then once you pass that beginning of the grind gets a lot of people, because the thrill is gone, right? The fun is gone. It's now just a job, and it's work. And if you can get through that, then you can get to the fun stage, right? Where you don't have to have like duties. Your job is just being there, guiding the ship. And at that point, you could bring in all of the other stuff, right? You can start rolling the dice and go like, well, I think poop scooping will make it. Let me try that, And I started that a little bit earlier, which I think is okay. Maybe once you get you get the grind into a point where you can be distracted and not let it get away from you.
Okay.
I think a lot of people fail when they get that grind and they get distracted and they get kind of that burnout, and they're miserable, and it shows to your employees. It shows if you don't have that. If you don't want to be there, like the people who work for you don't want to be there either. And if you don't have that buy-in, it's easy to walk away when there's a problem. When there's like, oh my God, how are we going to survive this catastrophic situation? Nobody really wants to be there anyways, then forget it. We'll just close the doors. But if this is my passion, I will figure out a way to survive. Because we've, constructive services has had some massive fails, over its history, but we survived because we kept going to work, and we didn't give up, and we kept the customer, and over the long term we made that money back. But it took, it took a lot,
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that kind of comes to my mind with that is like, it's even because I started in sales and then I got into entrepreneurship, and it's kind of like, I think they're pretty similar, but
they are.
But like with that, I had to believe in my product in order to sell it. If I come to somebody's door and I'm like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Like, I don't really want to be here, but like, do you want some pest control? They feel that.
Right.
So you're saying the same thing with work.
And being an entrepreneur is being in sales.
Yeah.
Even if your business is not salesy at all, you just have to sell yourself to the company.
Yeah.
Because a lot of businesses, there's a good amount of time where you could look around and say, especially if you set up your team right, that they could do this without me.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're not is because they don't want to. And because you see, like Bruce, who owns a steel company, well, he sold it, but he owned a steel company, and he used to brag to me that he's created 5 of his big competitors. They went to work for him, and then they spun off and did their own thing, and he was proud of that. And I get that. It is kind of a proud moment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, why do they not want to be with you?
Okay. I get. So, I was like, where is it gonna come?
Right. Yeah, if they're really good, and apparently they were good enough to go out and be his biggest competitors, like, why don't you have that talent stay with you? Yeah. So you got to keep the buy-in, and it's hard. I think it only comes through genuine acts, and there's no like. I can't really give you a playbook to get people to follow you. It's you just got to really lead,
Yeah, I mean, that was my next question, was like how to find good talent. And you're like, I can't give it to you. You just got to be a good person.
Yeah, I mean, you could, if you try to manufacture it, everybody's going to see through it, right? Yeah. Especially if you hire someone who's working with you, they have contact with you, 20 to 80 hours a week or whatever the schedule is. Like, if you're not who you are, they can see through it pretty quickly. So.
Well, here's another question I had. Since you kind of got your hands in a couple of pies, which is an interesting thing for me to say, but how do you utilize like new softwares like automations and AI and stuff?
That's a really good question. So the biggest challenge for Scoop Soldiers and the sister company Chorby is the technology aspect.
Okay.
Because as we're growing that business, there are some very big names in the software platforms, but they all have their limitations and they don't really fit what we're trying to do. With being able to have one customer dealing with multiple partners, so like multi-tenancy, and being able to run, because all of the customer care aspect of Scoop Soldiers is done by the corporate entity, and we only as a franchisee get involved if it gets escalated. If it's, hey, I need to reschedule to Tuesday, I don't even know about it. It just happens on the customer care team. So it's a very unique setup, and we were looking at trying to build our own software platform, but the challenge is immense. We've gone to a few vendors, and it's anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million to get, by the time it's all sussed out. And so we've been very technology focused lately, trying to figure, okay, is it worth hiring in-house developers? It's super risky because we could, developers aren't cheap. And if you pay them for 2 years and you still don't have anything that works, there's no, it's just 2 years of wasted money. And then AI is, you look at it like the .com bubble is what everybody compares it to, right? Yeah. So if you figure out what the Yahoo and the Google is, and the AT&T, then you're golden. But if you're the 50 million other .com companies that just raised a bunch of money and then went out of business when everything busted, I think AI is going to be the same. I think there's going to be some huge players that come out of this, or in some huge industries, because I use it regularly, casually. Like if I want to, the last thing I used it for was I was having some issues with QuickBooks, giving me some weird error, and I asked one of the Bard, the Bing one. Okay. I asked it, like, what does this mean? And it gave me like step-by-step directions how to fix the error, and it mostly worked, right? But that kind of thing is very useful, but that's not quite. I mean, it's technically integrating into my business, but it's not really integrating into my business. Yeah. So because we've kicked around the idea for customer care, because that's where the lowest hanging fruit is. Mm-hmm. And it's, we also have about we have 7 or 8 customer care associates, but I don't think we want to be. I just don't feel that our company is the kind of company that would farm that out to an AI. An AI can probably do 80% of the job, and be far cheaper, but it's not such a big taxing thing that I want to, we've got good people in those positions. Yeah. I don't want to just walk away from that and try this other thing. And I think people, they're getting really good, but I think people can still tell that they're talking to an AI. Yeah. It's, we're really close. And it depends on if you have a very routine situation, then you might not be able to know. But, I think we still have a lot of one-off calls, that they'd be able to figure it out. But I feel like it's a little disingenuous at this point. I think it's coming, and I don't know if it might be here right now. Like, as far as where public opinion doesn't think, oh, well, I'm talking to a robot, I need to talk to a person. I think at some point it might be acceptable to just understand that you're talking to a robot. That's okay. That's I don't know.
I feel like it'll be a mix of both, because if somebody hops on the phone, like right now I want to talk to a person on the phone, but if they're texting me and I just need an answer from that specific business, then I think that does make sense.
Right. And like I said,
on the phone though, you can tell Chase has an AI.
Yeah.
And it's annoying. So.
Yeah. And American Airlines has had an AI for a very long time.
Yeah.
But it was impressive 5 years ago. I haven't called it lately.
Yeah.
But like, it made the little beep boop 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 noise just to tell you that I'm a computer, and it would, would answer the phone and know who you are by your phone because of the caller ID.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would say that, I see you have an upcoming flight. Do you want to change your seat? And you would talk to it, and it would actually. I'd used it several times, and now I just use the app. But that was before the app was popular, and it was impressive how well it worked even back then. But it had a very narrow set of.
Yeah, it wasn't true AI.
It wasn't. No, it was like a flow chart.
Yeah.
But it was very good, and I think that in those types of situations where it's like I just need to do a thing, then AI is probably socially acceptable. But once you get into the I want to talk to somebody, because especially with the pet industry, right? A lot of times we're dealing with someone's dog, or like a gate got left open and the dog got out. Like, we have a procedure for that, and we could handle that with AI, but they don't want to talk to an AI.
Yeah, they want to speak to a person. Right.
They're kind of upset about the situation. They don't want to just go like talk to a robot, and the robot's like, okay, well then I will get, like, no, that's not what they want. They want a little bit of, I'm mad, I need some resolution,
Yeah. I was even thinking from the sales perspective, like, I don't know if it'll ever get to the point, because at first when I was in sales before I started my business, they had it to the point where I thought that I would be like, what's the point of becoming a sales guy anymore if there's going to be a AI salesperson? I'm like, why do people still buy from people? Because they want to buy from people.
Right. If they don't want to buy from a person, they'll just order it on Amazon.
Exactly.
Right. So sometimes,
even with the YouTube AI people, like there's AI YouTubers, but like you still want to see Tony Robbins or any of the business guys that are on there. You still want to watch them because they have a story.
Right. That people have a connection with them. You've got the buy-in, right? Yeah. So that they feel like they know you, even though you never met them. And that's why I kind of wanted to start filming videos, to kind of be able to build that relationship with people. Because I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think we're right on that cusp where, fast forward a year or 2 years from now, a lot of these questions will be answered.
Yeah. All these questions will be they'll be answered. And I mean, even right now, these videos, I don't have enough time to edit them into different clips, so I have an AI edited into clips, and then I go in and I fix a couple things.
Right.
So literally, like, I don't I use AI every single day.
Yeah. And
it's like, just having the tools, I feel like we'll get to a point where in the future, maybe 5 years time, people only have to, those 9 to 5 people, those people who are like just trying to work,
right,
they'll probably only have to work 2 or 3 hours a day.
Right.
But it's the entrepreneurs, it's the salespeople, it's the people who are wanting to grind, that want to get to that higher level. I think that the wage gap will get bigger, or not wage gap, the wealth gap.
Yes.
Just because it'll be like, oh, I can work 3 days and then play video games all day. I'll just do that. And then the other guy's like, I only need 3 hours to finish this one thing. I'm going to do that 3 hours 3 more times.
Exactly. And I don't know who's right. Like, if it's not having the stress, working 3 hours a day, and having all of your basic Maslow hierarchy of needs met, is that's not wrong.
It's not, no.
But yeah, and I think the people,
I wouldn't be able to do it though.
Right. I think the people who sit around and like, they're in a room like this and they're like, hey, there's a light bulb over there out and it's driving me crazy. I got to do something about it. Like the person that is just not okay sitting there doing nothing, they're going to keep stacking that deck, and like you said, it's going to get, exponentially bigger. And I think that's a good point. It's, because I think the skill sets is managing the AI. That's going to be pretty common. And then there are, because they have a 3D printer that'll print an entire house out of concrete. But somebody still has to run the machine.
Yeah.
Somebody still has to set it up. I've been watching them. They're here local and in Arizona, and kind of from afar, because I still look at it going, not quite here yet, but because they're trying to say, well, we're automating the process. Well, you're automating a part of the process, but you shifted the labor burden over to people who set up the machine, transporting the machine, programming, because a 3D printer requires a lot of programming. So you've changed the skill sets, but you haven't eliminated the labor.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things out there where you go, okay, there will be jobs for a very long time that aren't going away. Like if you have, like let's say that light bulb that's out over here that you can't see on camera, but there's a little light bulb out. Like maybe that is not a burned out light bulb. Now what? Now you need someone with some skills to know how to troubleshoot, diagnose, figure out, like, is it a bad wire? Is it a breaker? Is it a bad socket? Like there's, the variables get exponentially big. And maybe at some point that'll be something that, you could automate into a robot or an AI, but that's a really long way away. Right now we're looking at repetitive stuff, and a lot of the technology stuff is, if it's in a computer, it's a lot easier to apply AI to.
I mean, even with us, like we are an AI automation agency, and I thought it was going to be like plug and play. I thought it was going to be like we do this couple of inputs, and then this happens, and then we're done.
Right.
But no, like
right.
No, not at all. We have one of my partners is literally in software, and he has to code the actual AI. Right. I was like, okay, I can just buy this and then do that. And he's like, no, it's literally WordPress. So WordPress, back in whenever it came out, there's now BotPress. Okay. So he still has to go in, open up a whole sheet, and then he works on it all the time. So it's like, you can't just, it isn't just, have the AI create the AI and do that. No, you can't. Like, it can help you, but it can't fully do it for you yet.
And especially now, because right now the AI can be confidently wrong.
Yeah.
It leads you down the wrong pathway. So you have to know internally, like in your mind, what it should be producing for you. And you have to kind of double check that it's going on the right roads. So that's interesting. Yeah, because I think of other ways we could try to integrate AI, but because most of my business is so physical, it's hard. There's probably points for sure, but I don't know if it's worth the cost benefit at this moment in time. But it's getting closer.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think about that,
Yeah. It's on everybody's mind right now. That's why.
Yeah, it is.
Starting out, I was like, this fascinates me. Let me figure out how to dive in.
Yeah, it's the new hotness for sure. Like there's always the new technology, that comes out and revolutionizes industries.
What do you think about that? What do you think about, like, because I mean, some of the things that I've heard is like the guys who are on the jets, the guys who are those big successful people. First of all, most of the billionaires are made in private equity, but like some of them are the ones that do have the jets, the multimillionaires. They're like, I take out trash, and I do have a company that takes care of trash. Versus some people who are like, I'm just got here. I was, I just made this software. Like, which, I don't know which one. I think they're both good. I don't.
They're both good, but I kind of know from dipping my toe in that world a little bit, that the majority of them are the guy who picks up trash or makes the paper clips. Yeah. If that guy built a business over 30 years and grew to a multinational conglomeration, he doesn't want you to know who he is because he doesn't need the headache. Like, his life is pretty good. Yeah. The guys that you hear about, like Elon Musk and all of these, or I coded this one piece of software and now I'm super rich. They kind of need you because they need the market share. They need the advertisement. They need the recognition. So that's why you hear about them. The guys that don't need you, you don't hear about. And and it's the guys you don't hear. I used to tell people, like, I want to be, the guy. They go, what do you do? Oh, I make paper clips. And they go, like, oh, paper clips. They cost nothing. Who cares? Whatever. And then you turn around and the guy's got, $100 million in the bank account with the paper clips because everybody uses paper clips. That's the thing. But I don't know that guy's name.
Yeah.
But
But you use his stuff every single day.
Right.
But what I've been reading recently is the Almanac by Naval Ravikant, and it's literally, he talks about the wealth creation. He's like, one of the highest ones are media, and then software, and then also capital. So like, because they're leveraged, they're infinitely leverageable. So like, this piece of media, if I put it out, it could gain views forever.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's it might not gain views forever, but like, it is infinitely leverageable in that spot. So.
Right, and I think I would agree with that little hierarchy, that ranking or whatever, because that's why I like being in the capital markets. We had a lot of leverage when it was feasible, when the rates were better, and you start seeing kind of that exponential growth, and it's exciting. Media is very fickle, but it will allow you to, when you look at these influencers who have these giant followings, and you think, oh wow, they make $3 million a year off of YouTube or something, but that's not really where the wealth is coming from. The wealth is coming from where they say that they pick up this makeup pack and everything's amazing, I really like it, and all of a sudden they've got $1 million deal from this makeup pack or whatever. It's more complicated, but that's it's the exposure. Once you become a following, you can like you said, leverage that following. Same thing with money. Once you have money, you can leverage that money for more money. And then if some people are super risky, and then they leverage that money for more money, and then so I think that those are very valuable. I think the software aspect of it, that train has left the station, maybe. I think now, if all of the 1000x software packages, they're written, and there might be a few of them dark horses that we don't know about, because obviously if I knew about it, I'd hire somebody right now and we'd go do it. But I think that it's now a mature market. So when it started, when any market is just burgeoning, you can find that golden ticket, and the Standard Oil of the day, right? And you can just maximize that and make millions and millions and millions of dollars. But right now there's a few big players in the software world. Game developers, Microsoft, which owns a lot of the game developers, and Google, Apple, Facebook, and then there are business to business software companies that they have a lot of software packages as well, like Salesforce and Intuit, and those kind of companies, and they've got a pretty fleshed out marketplace. So there's the barrier to entry is high. Like, a lot of those software packages are terrible, but for me to come in and create a competitor, I hate QuickBooks, but that's what I use, because on the smaller businesses it makes sense, because there's not really a lot of alternatives that actually check all the accounting boxes if you want to do real accounting, instead of just knowing, hey, what are my daily sales? If that's all you need, then there's 1,000 products that'll work. But the reason why there's only one QuickBooks desktop in that area is because it would take me $50 million to create a product that sucks as bad as theirs, and then it'd take another $50 million to create the product I would actually like to use. But then all of a sudden, you're gonna have to charge so much money for it, nobody can afford it, so it doesn't really matter, and it's kind of a saturation. So I think AI, people look at it and get excited because they think, oh, maybe there's the next little new market segment that we can all race to the finish line to see who can create that, $1 billion software package. So I think software is out there, but the windows are closing. So you got to figure it out. The advantage of software is that if you sell one copy, it costs you a lot of money. If you sell 1,000 copies, it costs you less money. And if you sell 100 million copies, then it's darn near just infinite money.
Yeah.
And that's why that leverage is great.
Yeah.
Because you're okay. Well, what's it cost you to create the 1 million software package? Well, it's pennies worth of server time, right, to download the package. If you're building houses, and what's it cost to build the 1 million house? Well, 80% of what it cost you to build the first house. The scale doesn't hockey stick like the software does.
Yeah, the number one thing that he says in that book is literally, you give me a long enough lever, I can move the world.
Yeah.
So as long as you're able to find that lever, that lever, then you're able to move anything.
Yeah, that's a great example. Because so many of there's so many businesses that like poop scooping, right?
Yeah.
Every new customer I get is profitable, but we're at the point where I make the same amount of money per customer going forward, right? So it's not like I can get, if I got a 10x customer valuation, like if I got 10x more customers, it's still going to make the same amount per customer. But if software, if I 10x my software distribution, then I'm going to make a lot more money per license, so because I still have to send a tech out there, still have to buy a truck, still have to pay gas, insurance.
Well, other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap everything up. What can we expect from you? What do you got planned for the future, like in the next 5-10 years?
I might take a nap.
Alright.
No, I'm involved with Camp Belmont. It's a little children's camp in East Texas, and we're going to launch a capital campaign. We're right at the starting line, so we're getting all the documentation finalized with the perspectives. So hopefully you'll see new buildings out there, and that's my 5-year goal for that. And I think I'll keep grinding on everything else, and hopefully it'll all just be a little bit bigger, a little bit better.
So that's the number. So I've said this, I've heard this multiple places. Like the 3 things that most successful people have is pretty much large ego, where they're like, I know I can get it.
Yeah.
And then crippling insecurity. So I know I can, but I freaking don't.
I
don't
get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need more, and
Yeah.
then impulse control. So like you were saying,
Yeah.
with that first 6 months, getting
Yeah.
really excited, but not having the impulse control to stick through after that.
Delayed gratification.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So saying 1% better, it just feels like you're living that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gotta keep grinding. So
Grinding.
this has been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, other than that, we're gonna go ahead and shut it off.